Yep. So my name's Jarryd, vocalist for Roswell DeathSquad. We're a four-piece from Melbourne City. More or less, yeah, we're like a technical death metal, deathcore, proggy kind of band, I guess. Like we don't really sit in a genre, so yeah, it's a bit of a weird one. But yeah, we've got our release show coming up on the 30th of March for our album Welcome Home. Technically, we dropped it in January. However, doing like a relaunch for it to actually showcase the actual album itself, which is down at the Workers Club in Melbourne on the 30th. I think tickets are $15 for pre-sale or $25 on the door. So come down for a Easter long weekend, a couple of bevies and some death metal.
Sounds good, brother. Thanks for joining us today, Jarryd.
Thank you.
My pleasure. So Roswell DeathSquad released your debut album, Welcome Home, back on January the 5th, mate. So you've been out a couple of months now, so how's it been received?
Pretty good. A lot of the feedback that we have had has been absolutely phenomenal. You know, from whether it be, you know, just old mate down the street or, you know, a few people overseas, had a few like reviews come through from overseas and everyone's been loving it. Yeah, I guess it hits the heavy mark. It hits the metalcore kind of chorusy mark as well, and gives everyone a bit of everything rather than it just being stale. So, which is kind of what we aim for. But yeah, it's been great. It's been received a lot better than what we did anticipated, and especially releasing like just randomly at the start of the year. You know, like our Spotify numbers are sitting at like 2,000 to 3,000 every month, and for a new band that, you know, no one really knows, it's pretty good mark at the moment. So doing pretty well.
Cool. So tell us a bit more, like go a bit deeper into it for us, bro, in the musical side of the album and what you were going for with it.
So musically, more or less, the boys from like a guitar, you know, like from a musicality side of things, they were more going for, you know, like the technical death metal, thrash metal kind of proggy sound. And that's what they had before I joined the band last year. Last year when I joined the band, it was pretty much like very straight tech death. They just wanted, you know, like a vocalist that did like some weird noises and, you know, to meet up with the deathcore kind of scene and, you know, try and get the music to work with like a deathcore vocalist. So it's kind of where I came in. I walked in and more or less went for, with these tracks, went more with the metalcore voice or like, you know, harsher metalcore kind of like fry screamy kind of stuff, to add in, I guess, a bit of variance between just being straight technical death metal and, you know, your classic fucking guttural toilet bowl vocals. Like give it some life or some feeling into it and bring in that, like, you know, more emotional vocal, so that way you can get a bit of emotion across and a bit of a storytelling side of things. So I feel like that's kind of where both things have kind of come together. And, you know, we don't necessarily sit in that type of genre where it's, you know, straight technical death metal or it's deathcore or it's metalcore. It's something a bit weird or something a bit different, which is, you know, kind of what I look for in music myself, and that's what the boys also look for as well. So I think we've hit the mark there as well.
Sweet. Now these days, mate, like probably more so than ever before, there's so much music out there for people to listen to. So as a fresh band going into your debut album, like what sorts of things do you focus on to make sure that you're not just going to get lost in the masses, I guess?
I guess for me personally, it's keeping up with, you know, with what's being released or what the new big thing is. So like at the time of writing, especially like the lyrical content for this album, Lorna Shore were a huge thing at that point in time last year. And one thing that kind of worked for me really well is like it's a band that I actually really look up to. So keeping in mind, like, you know, trying to work out how he does, like Will does all of those crazy ass vocals and stuff, and all the strange ass sounds that come out of that guy's mouth is interesting in itself. But just keeping up to date with, you know, the music that is out there, because you don't want to come across, I guess, like you're recycling something that someone else has already done, or not keeping things fresh, especially like within the scene, because it's ever growing and it's always so fast paced, especially with, you know, like new bands coming out or new sounds or this, that, and the other. Like there's always something that comes into the mix. So it's just keeping up with that new sound that's coming out every week, or, you know, keeping an eye on what's local and what's big and what's working in the industry at the moment. So that way, you know, you can be on par with that.
Yeah, cool. So I've always said, bro, that time is the best judge of character. So the album's been out for 2 months now. So are you personally still happy with it, or are there things that you think you could have done different?
I mean, I'm stoked with it. Overall, absolutely stoked with it. Yeah, there are obvious, like there's always going to be that critical point for any musician or just anyone that's an artist in general that can critique their own work. So, you know, like if I could do it over again, I'd love to go back in the studio and re-record vocals, or go and re-record guitar, or, you know, this, that, and the other, and, you know, change a little bits and pieces here and there. But overall, like pretty much like pretty happy with it overall.
Now, the press release says Welcome Home is a breathless leap into the unknown. Can you elaborate on that a bit for us?
Yeah, so I guess more or less like what we're going for, like storytelling wise and just lyrical content wise, was just a bit of like a introduction into where we're gonna go with the story arcs. So part of Welcome Home is literally welcoming home our alien overlords, just being that, you know, like I guess a part of the subtext of the band itself is, you know, it's very alien influenced, or kind of sits in that like alien metal subgenre. So a few songs, like say for instance, like part 1 and part 2, so the last 2 songs on the album, they come from a story that myself and our guitarist Jack have written together, more or less, about aliens coming through like a portal, or like a wormhole in existence, and trying to salvage what their lifetime was in their world, by taking over ours and exterminating the human race to pretty much utilize our world as theirs, or our Earth as theirs. And yeah, I guess like going back to the breathless step into the unknown is the, you know, these beings that might exist or do exist, or to us, they do exist. And just exploring that idea, or the existence of something higher power than ourselves.
That's one beautiful thing about music, bro. Like everything that you've just said then, because you've woven it into the concept of an album, like someone will sit there and go, oh yeah, that's a pretty interesting theory. But if you sit in the pub talking to someone about it, they go, fuck off, mate, you're off your head.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
So along those lines with those 2 songs that you mentioned, mate, like the presser says that the last song, Heart of the Universe 2 Flatline, brings to a close the universe that we perceive. Like it sounds beautiful and romantic on the surface, but it's dark as fuck when you think about it.
Yeah. So it's look, I went more for the emotional feel of it, and it is extremely like if you read between the lines, it is extremely dark, ominous, and like just terrifying. What could happen, or what would happen if we were to step into that unknown? And that is, you know, obviously having them come and take over the universe. You know, part like the last line of that song is just undefined. So the final word of that song is undefined, and the meaning of undefined is, you know, more or less the universe itself will implode within itself to then be undefined within our existence, or within our capability of understanding. So you know, as someone comes through like a wormhole, they try and pull something through that, whether it be their universe or their world or their spaceships and so on. And then the universe implodes within itself, and that in itself is undefined, because then we are undefined and we're just back to square one, more or less.
Oh, cool. Now, Roswell DeathSquad only came on the scene last year, mate, formed out of past and present members of bands like Festation, Harlott, Carthus, Mistress of Misery, and Fear the Fallen, mate. So what parts of each of those bands did you bring to the table to create the sound that became Roswell DeathSquad?
So I guess the drummer, his name is Dan. He came from the band Harlott a couple of years ago. He was a touring drummer for them for like, I think 4 or 5 years. So more or less, he's brought in that like that thrash technical death metal-y like drum technique into the band. Festation was the guitarist Jack, his old band as well. He's brought in a lot of that more tech deathy, technical run slot kind of guitar work. So he doesn't like to play a lot of single notes throughout songs. He plays on an 8-string and does things that aren't technically you know, allowed to happen on a guitar, but for some reason it fucking works. Yeah, he's absolute madman. And then yeah, the bassist, he's from Carthus. He's, you know, just brought in his smooth, groovy bass tone into the band. Very thrashy background as well. And then myself with Mistress of Misery and Fear the Fallen, they were both very like metalcore, deathcore bands. Mistress of Misery more so from Melbourne scene, and then Fear the Fallen was from the Gold Coast back in Queensland. More or less, yeah, those two bands were very like metalcore-y, hardcore, deathcore kind of like bands that I fronted as well. And yeah, I've just kind of brought in that that kind of sound back into the tech death side.
Now, you sort of touched on this before, mate, but you blend metalcore, thrash metal, death metal, and a bit of prog in there that it somehow all sounds really good together, bro. But in the writing process, how hard is it to strike the balance between all of them? Like, is it you trial and error, or how do you know when enough's enough?
Look, it is very difficult. Like at the moment, we're we're in the process of currently writing another EP, which we have 3 songs for at the moment, but we're trying to get to the 4th or 5th. Currently, it's been a bit of a difficult step, just being that we're trying to one up what we've already done.
Yeah.
But yeah, that tech, like doing the tech death stuff, and then, you know, trying to add in a bit of like, you know, a breakdown here or there, so it does come back to that like more deathcore, metalcore sound, and having that space in between the songs. Whereas like if you listen to you know, classic technical death metal, it's just consistent, just not like absolute nonsense for like 4 or 5 minutes, and you're just blown away by it. But we're trying to add in like the craziness, but also let the music breathe, so that way the, you know, the fan or the punter at the show can then, you know, utilize that space to breathe, to, you know, whether it be throw down or throw hands or do whatever, start a pit, do the whole thing, you know, like give it a little bit of breath, so that way there's that opening for it.
Now, you announced an album launch party called Unsacred Saturday on March the 30th at the Workers Club in Fitzroy. So tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, so been working with a company called Outcast Bookings for the better part of 3 or 4 years now. And more or less they've reached out to me in order to set up like a show. You know, we've been in contact for a couple of months just about an album release show in general. And the guys over there, Scott and Finn, have you know, graciously added us into their work list in order to, you know, get us on some shows down here and get the word out about it. More or less this show that's coming up, we've got Escari on headlining, which are like a death metal, thrash metal kind of band from Melbourne. Got a band called 308 from Queensland that are coming down to help us out with it.
I saw them a couple of weeks ago. Bloody good.
Yeah, good shit. Yeah, I've been jamming them out the last couple of weeks, and they're a good time. Good time. Then we've got Rise from the Ashes, which are a metalcore outfit, like a death metal outfit from Melbourne. Then ourselves, Roswell DeathSquad, as well as Pendle Kill, and He Who Seeks Vengeance, which are a huge, like, kind of like Parkway Drive Frankston band. And a new band called Void Out. This is their first ever show, and they are top tier metalcore at its finest. So it's going to be a good time.
Right, and probably the best thing about that, bro, is the doors open at 4:30 and the last band finishes at 11. So you could feasibly be home drunk and passed out before midnight.
Yeah, it's literally just get on the piss all weekend and just keep the bender going, mate.